Tonight, we begin a gentle journey through the magical world of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Let your mind drift peacefully as we explore a story of wonder, friendship, and quiet discovery in a world where magic feels as natural as breathing. But before that, my name's Murphy, and I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time of day it is for you. If this brings you calm, don't forget to subscribe. There are so many more peaceful nights ahead. Our story begins on a quiet evening in November on a street called Privet Drive. The houses stand in perfect rows, each one neat and tidy, with small gardens and drawn curtains. Street lamps cast soft pools of yellow light along the empty sidewalk. The air is still and peaceful, carrying the gentle sounds of a neighborhood settling in for the night. Walking slowly down this ordinary street comes an extraordinary man. Professor Albus Dumbledore moves with calm dignity, his long robes flowing softly behind him. His silver hair and beard catch the lamplight, and his eyes twinkle with ancient wisdom behind half-moon spectacles. In his hand, he carries a strange device that looks like a silver cigarette lighter. Dumbledore pauses at each street lamp, pointing his device towards the light. One by one, the lamps dim and go dark, their warm glow flowing into his mysterious tool. The street grows quieter and more peaceful with each light that fades. He moves methodically, taking his time, as if this simple task requires careful attention. As Dumbledore continues his gentle work with the street lamps, a tabby cat sits perfectly still on a low brick wall. The cat has been there all day, watching the house at number 4 Privet Drive with intelligent eyes. Its tail occasionally twitches, but otherwise it remains as motionless as a statue. The cat observes everything with quiet patience. It watches the coming and going of the ordinary family who lives in the house. It sees the man leaving for work in his pressed suit, the woman tending to a garden, and the large baby playing in the yard. The cat's eyes follow every movement, as if it understands something important is about to happen. When Dumbledore approaches, the cat's attention turns to him. There's something knowing in the way it looks at the elderly wizard, something that suggests this is no ordinary cat at all. The air around them feels charged with quiet magic, though everything appears perfectly normal on the surface. Suddenly the tabby cat begins to change. Its form shimmers and grows, transforming gracefully into a stern-looking woman, wearing emerald green robes. Professor McGonagall stands where the cat had been sitting, her transformation as smooth and natural as breathing. She adjusts her pointed hat and looks at Dumbledore with a mixture of concern and respect. The two professors stand together in the peaceful street, speaking in low voices about events that have shaken the wizarding world. Their conversation is interrupted by a deep, rumbling sound from above. They look up to see something extraordinary descending from the night sky. A massive motorcycle flies through the air, its engine purring softly as it approaches. The bike is much larger than any ordinary motorcycle, built to accommodate its enormous rider. Behind the handlebars sits Hagrid, a gentle giant of a man with a wild beard and kind eyes. His coat flaps in the wind as he guides the magical motorcycle down toward Privet Drive. In Hagrid's arms, wrapped in soft blankets, is a sleeping baby. Little Harry Potter rests peacefully against Hagrid's chest, completely unaware of the momentous journey he's just completed. The baby's dark hair sticks up in all directions, and across his forehead, partially hidden by his hair, is a lightning bolt-shaped scar. Hagrid lands the motorcycle with surprising gentleness, the engine settling into a quiet idle. He climbs down carefully, cradling the baby with the tenderness of someone who understands how precious his cargo is. His eyes are red-rimmed, as if he's been crying, but he handles little Harry with infinite care. The three adults gather on the sidewalk in front of number 4 Privet Drive. The house sleeps peacefully, its windows dark, the family inside unaware of the magical visitors standing at their gate. Hagrid reluctantly hands baby Harry to Dumbledore, who takes the child with gentle hands. McGonagall expresses her concerns about the family inside. She has watched them all day and finds them to be rather unpleasant people. The man is narrow-minded and cruel, the woman is gossip-obsessed and spiteful, and their son is already showing signs of being a terrible bully, despite his young age. She worries about what kind of childhood Harry will have with such relatives. Dumbledore listens to her concerns with understanding, but explains that this arrangement is for the best. Harry will be safer growing up away from the wizarding world, protected by powerful magic that comes from being with his mother's family. The magic will keep him hidden and safe until he's old enough to return to the world, where he's already famous. With great care, Dumbledore places sleeping Harry on the doorstep. He tucks the blankets around the baby and places a letter on top of the bundle, explaining everything the Dursleys need to know. Harry continues to sleep peacefully, his small hand curled against his cheek. The three magical adults stand together for a moment, looking down at the child who will grow up never knowing how famous he is, how many people love him, or what incredible destiny awaits him. Then, quietly and sadly, they part ways. McGonagall transforms back into a cat and disappears into the shadows. Hagrid climbs onto his flying motorcycle and rises into the night sky. Dumbledore walks away down the street, returning light to the street lamps as he goes. Years pass quietly on Privet Drive. Harry grows up in the house at number 4, but his childhood is far from happy. His relatives, the Dursleys, treat him more like a servant than a family member. Vernon Dursley, his uncle, is a large, beefy man who works at a drill company and despises anything unusual. Petunia Dursley, his aunt, is a thin, sharp-faced woman who spends her days gossiping with neighbors and keeping her house spotlessly clean. Their son Dudley grows larger and more spoiled with each passing year. He breaks his toys, demands new ones, and takes pleasure in making Harry's life difficult. The family gives Dudley everything he wants, while giving Harry as little as possible. Harry sleeps in a cupboard under the stairs, a tiny space just big enough for a narrow bed. His clothes are Dudley's cast-offs, always too big and worn out. He does most of the household chores while the Dursleys relax. Despite this treatment, Harry remains kind and curious, though he often feels lost and alone. Strange things sometimes happen around Harry, things he can't explain. Glass might crack when he's angry, or his hair might grow back overnight after Petunia cuts it short. The Dursleys notice these odd occurrences and blame Harry for them, making his life even more difficult. On a warm summer morning, the Dursley household buzzes with activity. Today is Dudley's birthday, and Petunia has planned a special trip to the zoo. Dudley bounces around the house in excitement, counting his presents over and over, always finding ways to make the number seem larger than it actually is. The family prepares to leave, but they face a problem. Mrs. Figg, the elderly neighbor who usually watches Harry during family outings, has broken her leg and cannot take him. Vernon and Petunia consider their options with obvious annoyance, clearly wishing they could simply leave Harry behind. Reluctantly, they decide to bring Harry along, but not before warning him sternly about his behavior. Vernon's face grows red as he explains that any funny business, any strange occurrences, will result in severe punishment. Harry nods quietly, though he doesn't understand what his uncle means by funny business, since the strange things that happen around him are never intentional. They drive to the zoo in Vernon's company car, Dudley pressed against the window in excitement while Harry sits quietly in the back. The morning is bright and warm, perfect for walking around outdoor exhibits. Other families mill about with children, everyone in good spirits for a day of looking at animals. The family wanders through the zoo at a leisurely pace, stopping at various exhibits. Dudley rushes from cage to cage, demanding to see the most exciting animals first. He pounds on glass barriers and shouts at animals that are resting, trying to make them move and perform for him. Eventually they reach the reptile house, a long building filled with glass cases containing various snakes and lizards. The interior is cool and dim, a peaceful contrast to the bright sunshine outside. Most of the other visitors move through quickly, but Dudley stops at a large enclosure containing a massive boa constrictor. The snake lies coiled and still, apparently sleeping. Dudley taps loudly on the glass, demanding that the snake move. When nothing happens, he presses his face against the barrier and bangs even harder. The snake continues to rest, completely ignoring the rude boy. After Dudley moves on to terrorize other reptiles, Harry approaches the boa constrictor's enclosure. He stands quietly, looking at the magnificent creature with genuine interest, rather than demanding entertainment. To his surprise, the snake opens its eyes and looks directly at him. Harry finds himself speaking to the snake, asking about its life in the zoo. Even more surprisingly, the snake seems to respond, moving its head in ways that suggest it understands. The boa appears to nod when Harry asks if it gets lonely, and it points with its tail toward a small sign indicating it was bred in captivity and has never seen its homeland. This peaceful conversation continues for several minutes, with Harry feeling a strange connection to the large snake. For the first time in his life, he feels like he's found someone who truly understands him, even if that someone happens to be a reptile. Suddenly, Dudley rushes back, having noticed Harry's animated conversation. He shoves his younger cousin aside and presses his face against the glass again, excited to see the snake finally moving. But as Dudley leans against the barrier, something extraordinary happens. The thick glass simply vanishes, as if it were never there at all. Dudley loses his balance and tumbles forward into the enclosure, landing with a splash in the shallow water. The boa constrictor, suddenly free, slithers out calmly and heads toward the exit, pausing only to thank Harry in its strange snake language. Chaos erupts in the reptile house as visitors scream and run. Zoo employees rush to help Dudley out of the enclosure, while others try to locate the missing snake. Vernon's face turns purple with rage as he realizes that somehow Harry must be responsible for this impossible occurrence. After the incident at the zoo, life on Privet Drive becomes even more unpleasant for Harry. The Dursleys watch him constantly, suspicious of every small thing he does. Vernon and Petunia whisper to each other when they think Harry isn't listening, their faces filled with worry and anger. Summer passes slowly, with Harry spending most of his time doing chores and staying out of the Dursleys' way. He tends the garden, cleans the house, and prepares meals while Dudley lounges in front of the television or plays with friends. The days feel long and lonely, filled with the same routine tasks. As Harry's 11th birthday approaches, something unusual begins to happen. Letters start arriving at number 4 Privet Drive, addressed specifically to Harry Potter in emerald green ink. The address is remarkably precise, specifying not just the house number and street, but also Harry's exact location within the house. The first letter arrives with the regular morning post. Vernon examines it with growing alarm, his face changing color as he reads the address. He tears the letter into small pieces without opening it, throwing the fragments into the fireplace. When Harry asks about it, Vernon snaps that it was a mistake, just junk mail that means nothing. But the letters continue to arrive, first 1 or 2 a day, then dozens. They come through the mail slot, down the chimney, even tucked into egg cartons delivered with the groceries. Each one is addressed to Harry in the same precise handwriting, and each one makes Vernon more frantic with worry. Vernon's attempts to stop the letters become increasingly desperate. He boards up the mail slot and blocks the chimney, but still the letters find their way into the house. They seem to appear from nowhere, slipping under doors and through cracks in the walls. Petunia grows more nervous with each passing day, jumping at every sound and watching Harry with frightened eyes. She whispers urgently with Vernon during their private conversations, though Harry can never quite make out what they're saying. Their fear is obvious, even if its cause remains mysterious. On Sunday morning, Vernon announces triumphantly that no letters can possibly arrive since there's no postal delivery that day. His satisfaction is short-lived, however, as letters begin pouring down the chimney, despite his attempts to block it. They fall into the living room like snow, covering the furniture and floor in a carpet of green envelopes. The letters pile up faster than Vernon can collect them. Soon there are dozens scattered around the room, all identical, except for slight variations in the precise address. Harry tries to grab one to see what it says, but Vernon is faster, snatching it away before Harry can read a single word. In his panic, Vernon makes a drastic decision. He announces that the family will take a vacation immediately, leaving Privet Drive behind until this mysterious letter situation resolves itself. Petunia protests weakly, but Vernon's mind is made up. They pack hurriedly and load into the car, driving away from their comfortable home with no clear destination in mind. Vernon drives for hours, taking random turns and changing direction frequently, as if he's trying to lose someone who might be following them. Harry sits in the back seat, confused and increasingly curious about what could cause such extreme behavior from his usually controlling uncle. Eventually, Vernon stops at a shabby hotel in a run-down part of a seaside town. But even here, the letters find them. They're slipped under the door and passed through the window by seagulls. Vernon's panic reaches new heights as he realizes that distance provides no escape from the persistent correspondence. In desperation, Vernon rents a small boat and pilots it through choppy waters to a tiny rocky island far from shore. On this desolate spot sits a ramshackle hut, barely more than 4 walls and a roof. There's no electricity, no telephone, no connection to the outside world whatsoever. The family huddles in the miserable little hut as storm clouds gather overhead. Rain begins to fall, drumming steadily on the thin roof. The wind howls around the walls, making the entire structure creak and sway. Dudley complains constantly about the uncomfortable conditions, but Vernon seems satisfied that they've finally found a place where no letters can reach them. They eat stale sandwiches for dinner and try to make themselves comfortable on the hard floor. Vernon guards the single door while Petunia peers nervously out the small windows at the dark ocean surrounding their temporary refuge. As midnight approaches on Harry's birthday, they finally begin to relax, believing they've escaped whatever force has been sending the mysterious letters. Just as the old clock in the hut begins to chime midnight, marking Harry's 11th birthday, a tremendous pounding shakes the door. The sound echoes through the small space like thunder, making the walls vibrate with each blow. The Dursleys freeze in terror, staring at the door as if expecting it to explode inward. Vernon grabs a rifle from the corner and points it at the door with shaking hands. His voice cracks as he demands to know who's there, threatening to shoot any intruders. Petunia huddles in the corner with Dudley, both of them pale with fear. The pounding stops, and for a moment there's silence, except for the storm raging outside. Then, with a tremendous crash, the door flies off its hinges and crashes to the floor. In the doorway stands the largest man Harry has ever seen, so tall he has to duck to fit through the opening. Hagrid steps into the hut, his massive boots squelching on the wet floor. Water drips from his long, wild hair and beard, and his enormous coat appears to be made from some kind of animal fur. Despite his intimidating size, his eyes are kind and gentle, twinkling with warmth and good humor. He looks around the miserable little hut with obvious disapproval, taking in the cowering Dursleys and the poor conditions they've imposed on themselves. His gaze finally settles on Harry, and his craggy face breaks into a delighted smile. Hagrid greets Harry with obvious joy, as if he's meeting an old friend after a long separation. He explains that he's been sent to deliver something very important, something that the Dursleys have been trying desperately to prevent Harry from receiving. From one of his many coat pockets, Hagrid produces a letter identical to all the others that have been arriving at Privet Drive. This one, however, is addressed specifically to Harry Potter, the hut on the rock, the sea. Harry stares at the impossibly precise address, wondering how anyone could know their exact location. With trembling hands, Harry opens the letter and reads it for the first time. The parchment is thick and expensive, bearing an elaborate coat of arms at the top. The letter formally invites Harry to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, beginning in the fall term. As Harry reads, his confusion grows. The letter mentions subjects he's never heard of, like transfiguration and defense against the dark arts. It includes a list of required books with titles like The Standard Book of Spells and A History of Magic. Nothing about it makes any sense to him. Hagrid watches Harry's face carefully, his expression growing increasingly concerned as he realizes that Harry knows nothing about the wizarding world. He turns to the Dursleys with rising anger, demanding to know what they've told Harry about his parents and his heritage. Vernon tries to maintain his authority, ordering Hagrid to leave immediately and threatening to call the police. But Hagrid's patience with the Dursleys has reached its end. With a flick of his umbrella, strange things begin happening to Vernon and his family, making it clear that Hagrid possesses powers far beyond anything they can comprehend. Sitting down heavily on the hut's only chair, which creaks dangerously under his weight, Hagrid begins to explain the truth to Harry. He speaks gently, understanding that this information will change everything Harry thought he knew about himself and the world. Hagrid tells Harry that he's a wizard, born to magical parents who were among the most respected and powerful people in the wizarding community. He explains that there's an entire hidden world of magical people living alongside ordinary humans with their own schools, shops, and government. Harry learns that his parents didn't die in a car crash, as the Dursleys had always told him. Instead, they were murdered by the most dangerous dark wizard of all time, a man so feared that most people won't even speak his name. This wizard tried to kill baby Harry as well, but something went wrong with the curse. As Hagrid continues his explanation, Harry begins to understand the strange things that have happened throughout his childhood. The glass disappearing at the zoo, his hair growing back overnight, his ability to appear on the school roof when running from bullies, all of these were accidental magic, signs of its true nature that the Dursleys had tried desperately to suppress. The storm outside continues to rage, but inside the hut, Harry feels a warmth and excitement he's never experienced before. For the first time in his life, he has answers to the questions that have always puzzled him. He's not just a freak or a burden. He's something special, something magical, something wonderful. The next morning dawns bright and clear, the storm having passed during the night. Hagrid wakes early and prepares to take Harry to London, where they'll shop for school supplies in the hidden magical district called Diagon Alley. The Dursleys huddle together in sullen silence, still shocked by everything they witnessed the night before. Hagrid and Harry travel by boat back to the mainland, then board a train to London. During the journey, Hagrid continues to share stories about the wizarding world, though he's careful to avoid certain topics that he says Dumbledore should explain later. Harry listens with fascination to tales of magical creatures and spells. In London, Hagrid leads Harry through busy streets filled with ordinary people going about their daily business. None of them seem to notice anything unusual about the giant man and the small boy walking among them. Eventually they stop in front of a shabby pub called the Leaky Cauldron, squeezed between a bookshop and a record store. To Harry's amazement, the other pedestrians walk past the pub as if it doesn't exist. Hagrid explains that this is because they're muggles, non-magical people who can't see magical places. The pub serves as the entrance to Diagon Alley, hidden from the ordinary world by powerful spells. Inside the Leaky Cauldron, patrons in robes and pointed hats chat quietly over their drinks. Several people recognize Harry immediately, approaching with excited whispers and eager handshakes. They call him famous and speak in hushed, respectful tones about his survival as a baby. Hagrid leads Harry through the pub and out into a small courtyard behind the building. The space appears to be a dead end, surrounded by high brick walls with no obvious exit. But Hagrid pulls out his umbrella and taps specific bricks in a particular pattern. The wall begins to move, bricks sliding and rearranging themselves to create an archway. Beyond the opening lies the most extraordinary street Harry has ever seen, Diagon Alley, the heart of magical London. The alley stretches away in both directions, lined with shops displaying the most amazing items. Cauldrons of all sizes hang outside one store, while another has windows full of telescopes and strange silver instruments. Owls hoot from cages, and somewhere in the distance, Harry can hear the sound of bubbling potions. Their first stop is Gringotts Wizarding Bank, an impressive white marble building that towers over the other shops. Bronze doors open onto a vast marble hall, filled with long counters, where strange creatures work diligently over ledgers and scales. Hagrid explains that these are goblins, magical beings who run the Wizarding Bank with absolute dedication to security and precision. They're smaller than humans, with long fingers and shrewd, intelligent eyes. Despite their somewhat intimidating appearance, they conduct their business with professional courtesy. A goblin, named Griphook, leads them through a maze of underground tunnels on a wild cart ride that feels like a roller coaster. The tracks wind deep beneath London, passing vast caverns and underground waterfalls. Harry holds on tightly as their cart speeds through the darkness, climbing and diving at breathtaking angles. They stop first at a vault belonging to Harry's parents, which contains more gold than Harry has ever imagined. Piles of golden coins called galleons glitter in the lamplight, along with silver sickles and bronze knuts. Hagrid helps Harry fill a small bag with enough money for his school supplies. Their second stop is a vault that Hagrid visits alone, retrieving a small wrapped package that he tucks carefully into his coat. He doesn't explain what it is, but he handles it with obvious importance and tells Harry that it's Hogwarts business, not to be discussed with anyone. The cart ride back to the surface is just as thrilling as the journey down, though Harry notices that Hagrid looks a bit green around the gills by the time they reach the main hall. The goblin attendants watch them with their sharp eyes, making careful notes in their ledgers about the vault visits. Once they're back on solid ground, Hagrid leads Harry out of the bank and onto the crowded street of Diagon Alley. The mysterious package remains hidden in Hagrid's coat, but Harry can see that the gamekeeper keeps checking to make sure it's still secure. They begin working their way through Harry's school supply list, visiting shops that specialize in magical equipment. At Madame Malkin's Robes for All Occasions, Harry is fitted for his school uniform, while floating measuring tapes work automatically around him. In Flourish and Blot's bookstore, they purchase Harry's required textbooks, including heavy volumes on magical theory and spellcasting. The books have strange titles, and some even try to bite unwary customers. Harry marvels at textbooks that move and change their illustrations as he watches. At the apothecary, they buy ingredients for potions, dried herbs, preserved creatures, and mysterious powders that bubble and smoke in their jars. The shopkeeper weighs everything precisely on brass scales, explaining the proper storage methods for various magical substances. Their final and most important stop is Ollivander's, a narrow shop with peeling paint and a dusty window display. Inside, thousands of slim boxes are stacked from floor to ceiling, each containing a different wand. The shop feels ancient and mysterious, filled with the weight of powerful magic. Mr. Ollivander appears from the shadows between the shelves, a pale, elderly man with wide, silvery eyes that seem to see everything. He remembers every wand he's ever sold and greets Harry with obvious curiosity, having long wondered when the famous boy would come to purchase his first wand. The wand-choosing process is unlike anything Harry could have imagined. Ollivander measures every part of Harry's body, his arm length, the distance between his nostrils, the circumference of his head. He explains that the wand chooses the wizard, not the other way around. Harry tries wand after wand, waving each one as instructed, but none seem to work properly. Some produce showers of sparks, others make the shop's displays rattle and shake. With each failed attempt, Ollivander becomes more intrigued, muttering to himself about the difficulty of finding Harry's perfect match. Finally, Ollivander presents a wand made of holly wood, with a phoenix feather core. The moment Harry's fingers close around it, he feels a warm sensation spreading through his hand and up his arm. Golden sparks stream from the wand's tip, dancing around the shop in spirals of light. Ollivander's eyes shine with satisfaction and something that might be concern. He explains that this wand is special because its phoenix feather core came from the same bird that provided the core for another wand the wand belonging to the dark wizard who killed Harry's parents. A few weeks later, Harry stands in King's Cross Station with his trunk and new owl, Hedwig, ready to begin his journey to Hogwarts. Hagrid has given him his ticket, but the instructions seem impossible. The train leaves from platform 9 3/4, which doesn't appear to exist. Harry searches the station carefully, finding platforms 9 and 10, but nothing in between. Other travellers hurry past without seeming to notice his confusion. His train is supposed to leave at 11 o'clock, and time is running short. Just as Harry begins to panic, he overhears a family discussing Muggles and Hogwarts. A plump, kind-faced woman herd several red-haired children through the station, clearly heading for the same mysterious platform. Harry follows them at a distance, hoping to discover the secret. He watches in amazement as the oldest boy runs straight at the solid barrier between platforms 9 and 10, disappearing completely instead of crashing into the wall. One by one, the other family members follow, vanishing into what appears to be solid stone. When Harry approaches the woman for help, she greets him warmly and explains the process. Mrs. Weasley tells him to run straight at the barrier without stopping or being afraid. It's all a matter of confidence and timing. Taking a deep breath, Harry pushes his trolley toward the barrier at a steady run. Just as he's about to crash into the wall, he passes through it effortlessly and emerges onto a hidden platform filled with magical families, saying goodbye to their children. The Hogwarts Express stands at the platform, a magnificent scarlet steam engine that gleams in the morning sunlight. Students of all ages board the train with their trunks and pets, creating a cheerful chaos of excitement and farewell hugs. Harry finds an empty compartment and settles in with his belongings, watching the magical world pass by his window as the train begins to move. The English countryside looks the same as always, but somehow everything feels different now that he knows magic exists. A red-haired boy appears in his compartment doorway, asking politely if he can sit down since everywhere else is full. This is Ron Weasley, the youngest son from the family Harry met at the station. Ron's clothes are worn and his wand is held together with tape, but his friendly smile immediately puts Harry at ease. The two boys begin talking and quickly discover they have much in common. Ron is amazed to meet the famous Harry Potter, while Harry is fascinated by Ron's knowledge of the wizarding world. Ron shares his sandwiches and tells Harry about Hogwarts houses, Quidditch, and the teachers they'll soon meet. When a witch pushing a trolley of magical sweets stops at their compartment, Harry buys armfuls of strange candies with names like chocolate frogs and Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. They share the treats while Ron explains which ones are safe to eat and which might taste like earwax or spinach. As the afternoon progresses, their peaceful journey is interrupted by a bushy-haired girl who appears in their doorway asking if they've seen a lost toad. She introduces herself as Hermione Granger and explains that she's been helping a boy named Neville search for his escaped pet throughout the train. Hermione is clearly excited about starting at Hogwarts and has already read all her textbooks from cover to cover. She demonstrates a simple spell she's been practicing, fixing Harry's broken glasses with a confident wave of her wand. Her knowledge and enthusiasm are impressive, though Ron seems somewhat intimidated by her obvious intelligence. She asks Harry and Ron which house they hope to be sorted into, explaining that she's researched all four and thinks Gryffindor sounds best because Dumbledore came from there. Her rapid-fire conversation covers everything from the school's history to the qualifications of various professors. After Hermione leaves to continue searching for Neville's toad, Ron mutters that she seems like a bit of a know-it-all. Harry isn't quite sure what to think of her, but he's impressed by her magical ability and thorough preparation for school. The train continues its journey through the afternoon, carrying the students toward their new life at Hogwarts. Harry watches the landscape change from farmland to wilder countryside, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness about what awaits him. As evening approaches, the train begins to slow, and students change into their school robes in preparation for arrival. Harry struggles with his unfamiliar clothes, grateful for Ron's help with the more complicated fastenings and adjustments. The Hogwarts Express comes to a stop at a small station platform lit by lanterns. In the darkness beyond, Harry can make out the silhouettes of mountains and forests. A loud voice calls for first-year students, and Harry recognizes Hagrid's friendly tones immediately. The new students follow Hagrid along a narrow path that leads down toward a great black lake. The air is cool and fresh, filled with the sounds of night creatures and gently lapping water. Other students chat nervously as they walk, everyone wondering what their first sight of the school will be like. Hagrid leads them to a fleet of small boats moored at the water's edge. 4 students climb into each boat, which then begins moving across the lake by itself, gliding smoothly through the dark water without any visible means of propulsion. As they round a bend in the shoreline, someone gasps in wonder. Rising from the far side of the lake, its windows twinkling like stars in the darkness, stands Hogwarts Castle. The ancient building seems to grow directly from a rocky cliff, its towers and turrets reaching towards the night sky. The castle is more magnificent than anything Harry has ever imagined. Hundreds of windows glow warmly in the darkness, and somewhere in the distance he can hear the faint sound of music and laughter. This magical place will be his home for the next 7 years, and already it feels more welcoming than Privet Drive ever did. The boats drift peacefully across the dark lake towards the castle, carrying the first-year students closer to their new home. Harry stares up at the towering walls and glowing windows, trying to imagine what life will be like inside those ancient stones. The other students chat nervously, everyone wondering which house they'll be sorted into. Hagrid leads them up a flight of stone steps to enormous oak doors that open onto the castle's entrance hall. The space is larger than the entire Dursley house, with a marble staircase leading to upper floors and flaming torches casting dancing shadows on the walls. Professor McGonagall appears to collect the first-year students, her emerald robes rustling as she walks. She explains that they'll soon join the rest of the school for the sorting ceremony, where each student will be assigned to one of 4 houses that will become like their family during their time at Hogwarts. She describes the 4 houses briefly: Gryffindor for the brave, Hufflepuff for the loyal, Ravenclaw for the wise, and Slytherin for the ambitious. Each house has its own dormitory, common room, and table in the Great Hall. Students earn and lose points for their house throughout the year, competing for the House Cup. The nervous first-years wait in a small chamber, while Professor McGonagall checks that everything is ready in the Great Hall. Harry can hear the buzz of hundreds of conversations from beyond the doors, along with the clatter of dishes and cutlery. His stomach rumbles, reminding him that it's been hours since he ate on the train. Finally, Professor McGonagall returns and leads them through the oak doors into the Great Hall. The room takes Harry's breath away. 4 long tables stretch the length of the hall, each filled with students wearing black robes trimmed in different colors. Thousands of candles float in mid-air, casting a warm, golden light over everything. Above them, the ceiling shows not stone or wood, but the night sky itself, complete with stars and drifting clouds. Hermione whispers that she's read about this. The ceiling is enchanted to look like the sky outside. It's so realistic that Harry has to remind himself they're still indoors. At the front of the hall sits the staff table, where the Hogwarts professors watch the proceedings with interest. Harry recognizes Hagrid among them, looking proud and excited. At the center of the table sits an elderly wizard with a long silver beard. This must be Albus Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of the age. Professor McGonagall places a four-legged stool in front of the first years, and on it sits an ancient wizard's hat, patched and frayed with age. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the hat twitches, and a wide rip near the brim opens like a mouth. The Sorting Hat begins to sing, its voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. The song explains the history of Hogwarts and describes the qualities that define each of the four houses. When it finishes, the great hall erupts in applause, and Professor McGonagall steps forward with a long roll of parchment. She begins calling names alphabetically, and one by one, nervous 11-year-olds sit on the stool and place the hat on their heads. After a few moments of consideration, the hat shouts out their house assignment, and they join their new housemates at the appropriate table. Harry watches as students are sorted into different houses, trying to guess where the hat will place him. Some decisions seem quick and obvious, while others take longer as the hat considers its choice. The whole process feels magical and momentous, as if these assignments will shape the students' entire futures. When Professor McGonagall calls Potter Harry, a hush falls over the entire Great Hall. Every face turns toward him as he walks on unsteady legs to the stool. Whispers follow him, and he hears fragments of excited conversations about the famous boy who lived. The hat settles over his eyes, blocking out the watching crowd. In the darkness, Harry hears a small voice speaking directly into his mind. The Sorting Hat considers his options carefully, weighing his courage, his intelligence, his loyalty, and his ambition. After what feels like hours but is probably only minutes, the hat makes its decision and shouts, "Gryffindor!" to the assembled school. The Gryffindor table explodes in cheers and applause, welcoming Harry as their newest member. He removes the hat with shaking hands and walks toward his new housemates, feeling relief and excitement in equal measure. After the sorting ceremony concludes and the welcome feast ends, the Gryffindor prefects lead the new students through the castle's winding corridors. The staircases move and shift as they climb, sometimes stopping at different floors than expected. Portraits on the walls watch them pass, some calling out greetings or advice. The Gryffindor common room lies behind a portrait of a fat lady in a pink dress, who demands a password before allowing them to enter. The prefects explain that passwords change regularly and must be kept secret from students in other houses. Inside, the common room is warm and cozy, decorated in deep reds and golds. Comfortable armchairs cluster around a crackling fireplace, and tall windows look out over the school grounds. Bookshelves line the walls, filled with both textbooks and recreational reading. The prefects explain the house rules and point out the staircases leading to the dormitories, girls to the left, boys to the right. Each dormitory houses students from the same year, creating small communities within the larger house structure. Harry climbs the spiral staircase to the first-year boys' dormitory, where he finds 4 other beds besides his own. His trunk sits at the foot of one bed, and Hedwig's cage rests on the nearby windowsill. Ron has the bed next to his, which makes Harry feel less homesick about sleeping in yet another unfamiliar place. The dormitory is circular, with tall windows offering views of the lake and surrounding mountains. Each bed has its own set of crimson hangings that can be drawn for privacy. Small tables beside each bed hold personal belongings and study materials. As Harry unpacks his few possessions, he talks quietly with his new roommates. Besides Ron, there's Neville Longbottom, the boy who lost his toad on the train, Dean Thomas, who comes from a Muggle family like Harry, and Seamus Finnegan, whose mother is a witch but whose father is a Muggle. They discuss their expectations for classes and compare their backgrounds, finding comfort in their shared nervousness about starting school. Some have grown up in magical families, while others are discovering this world for the first time. Despite their differences, they all share the excitement of beginning their education at Hogwarts. The next morning brings Harry's first full day of classes at Hogwarts. After breakfast in the Great Hall, he and Ron consult their schedules and make their way through the castle's confusing corridors to their first potions lesson in the dungeons. The potions classroom is cold and dimly lit, located deep beneath the castle, where no natural light can reach. Glass jars line the walls, filled with preserved creatures and mysterious substances floating in various colored liquids. The air smells of herbs, chemicals, and something slightly unpleasant that Harry can't identify. Professor Snape enters the classroom like a large bat, his black robes billowing behind him as he moves to his desk at the front of the room. His dark eyes sweep over the assembled first years with obvious disdain, lingering for a moment on Harry with particular intensity. Snape begins the lesson by explaining that potion making is a precise art that requires patience, skill, and intelligence. He speaks in barely more than a whisper, yet every student strains to hear his words, afraid of missing something important. His voice carries a subtle threat that suggests failure will not be tolerated. Without warning, Snape begins firing questions at Harry, asking about obscure potion ingredients and their properties. Harry has no idea how to answer these topics weren't covered in any of his textbooks, and he's only been in the wizarding world for a few weeks. Hermione's hand shoots up for every question, eager to demonstrate her extensive reading, but Snape ignores her completely. His focus remains on Harry, clearly enjoying the boy's inability to answer questions about subjects he's never studied. When Harry admits he doesn't know the answers, Snape's lip curls in a cold smile. He makes cutting remarks about fame not being everything, and suggests that Harry thinks he's too important to study like everyone else. The other students shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the unfair treatment. Despite this difficult beginning, the actual potion making proves fascinating. Following careful instructions, Harry attempts to brew his first magical potion, measuring ingredients precisely and stirring in exactly the right pattern. The process requires more concentration than he expected, but there's something satisfying about watching ordinary ingredients transform into something magical. Later in the week, Harry joins the other first-year Gryffindors and Slytherins on the castle grounds for their first flying lesson. The day is bright and breezy, perfect for learning to handle a broomstick. 20 broomsticks lie in neat lines on the grass, waiting for nervous students to claim them. Madam Hooch, the flying instructor, has spiky grey hair and yellow eyes like a hawk. She moves with the confident grace of someone who has spent countless years in the air. Her sharp eyes miss nothing as she watches the students approach their assigned broomsticks. She demonstrates the proper way to summon a broomstick, holding one hand over the broom and commanding it firmly to rise. Some students' brooms leap immediately into their hands, while others barely twitch or roll away across the grass. Harry's broom responds instantly, jumping up to meet his palm as if eager to fly. Before anyone can attempt to fly, Madame Hooch explains the importance of proper grip and balance. She walks among the students, adjusting their hand positions and correcting their posture. Flying may look effortless when done well, but it requires precise control and constant attention to safety. The lesson takes an unexpected turn when Neville's broom begins rising into the air before he's ready. Despite Madame Hooch's shouted instructions to remain on the ground, the broom climbs higher and higher, with Neville clinging desperately to its handle. Everyone watches in horror as Neville loses his grip and falls, landing hard on the grass with his wrist bent at an unnatural angle. Madame Hooch rushes to help him, quickly determining that he needs immediate medical attention from Madame Pumphrey in the hospital wing. Before leaving with the injured student, Madame Hooch strictly forbids anyone from mounting their broomsticks while she's away. She promises severe consequences for any student who disobeys, emphasizing that flying without supervision is dangerous and absolutely prohibited. As soon as Madame Hooch disappears into the castle with Neville, Draco Malfoy picks up something that fell from Neville's pocket during his fall. It's a remembrall, a glass sphere that glows red when its owner has forgotten something important. Malfoy examines it with obvious pleasure, making cruel jokes about Neville's accident. Harry steps forward and demands that Malfoy return Neville's property. The two boys face each other on the grass, surrounded by their watching classmates. The tension between Gryffindor and Slytherin students becomes obvious as they choose sides in the confrontation. Malfoy refuses to hand over the remembrall, suggesting instead that he'll hide it somewhere for Neville to find later. He tosses the glass ball into the air and catches it casually, enjoying his temporary power over the situation. His cronies, Crabbe and Goyle, stand behind him with menacing expressions. When Harry continues to insist that Malfoy return the remembrall, the Slytherin boy mounts his broomstick and rises into the air. He dangles the glass sphere tauntingly, daring Harry to come and take it. The challenge is obvious. If Harry wants to help his friend, he'll have to disobey Madame Hooch's direct orders. Despite Hermione's urgent warnings about breaking rules and the certainty of punishment, Harry mounts his own broomstick and kicks off from the ground. The sensation of flying is even more wonderful than he imagined, natural and exhilarating, as if he's found something he was always meant to do. High above the castle grounds, Harry confronts Malfoy and demands the return of Neville's remembrall. When Malfoy throws the glass ball as hard as he can towards the castle walls, Harry dives after it, in a spectacular display of flying skill that amazes everyone watching below. He catches the remembrall just inches from the ground, pulling up at the last possible second in a maneuver that would challenge even experienced flyers. The watching students cheer and applaud, clearly impressed by Harry's natural flying ability and quick reflexes. Harry's triumph is short-lived, however, as Professor McGonagall appears on the grounds, having witnessed his unauthorized flight from a castle window. Her stern expression suggests serious trouble ahead, and Harry prepares himself for detention or worse punishment. Instead of scolding him, Professor McGonagall leads Harry into the castle and to a classroom where she interrupts another lesson. She speaks quietly with the teacher, then asks to borrow one of the older students, Oliver Wood, a fifth-year Gryffindor. In the corridor, Professor McGonagall explains that Harry's flying display was remarkable for someone who has never been on a broomstick before. Rather than punishing him for rule-breaking, she wants to offer him an extraordinary opportunity. Oliver Wood listens with growing excitement as Professor McGonagall describes Harry's natural flying talent. She asks Wood to explain Quidditch, the magical sport played on broomsticks that is wildly popular throughout the wizarding world. Wood describes the game enthusiastically, 2 teams of 7 players each, flying around a pitch with goalposts at either end. 3 types of players have different roles. Chasers try to score with a large red ball called the quaffle, keepers defend the goalposts, and beaters use clubs to hit dangerous bludgers away from their teammates. The most important position, Wood explains, is the seeker. Each team has 1 seeker whose job is to catch the golden snitch, a tiny winged ball that flies around the pitch at incredible speed. Catching the snitch ends the game and earns the team 150 points, usually enough to determine the winner. Professor McGonagall believes Harry has the natural reflexes and flying instincts to be an excellent seeker. She's so confident in his ability that she wants him to join the Gryffindor Quidditch team immediately, despite the usual rule that first-year students aren't allowed to play. This opportunity is almost unheard of. Most students don't make their house teams until their 3rd or 4th year, if at all. Harry will be the youngest seeker at Hogwarts in over a century, a distinction that brings both honor and pressure. As October arrives, the friendship between Harry and Ron grows stronger, but Hermione remains somewhat apart from them. Her enthusiasm for rules and studying makes her seem superior and annoying to many of her classmates. She often corrects other students and raises her hand for every question, which doesn't endear her to anyone. The situation comes to a head during a charms lesson, where Professor Flitwick teaches the class to make feathers fly using the Wingardium Leviosa spell. Hermione masters the charm immediately, making her feather dance gracefully through the air, while others struggle with the proper wand movement and pronunciation. Ron becomes frustrated with his repeated failures, and when Hermione offers to help, he snaps at her rudely. He makes cruel comments about her know-it-all attitude, suggesting that maybe if she weren't so bossy, she might have more friends. His words hit their mark, and Hermione flees the classroom in tears. She doesn't appear at dinner that evening, and Harry and Ron learn from Parvati Patil that Hermione has been crying in the girls' bathroom all afternoon. Both boys feel guilty about Ron's harsh words, but neither knows how to apologize or make things right. Their guilt turns to alarm during the Halloween feast, when Professor Quirrell bursts into the Great Hall with terrifying news. A mountain troll has somehow entered the castle and is loose in the dungeons. All students must return immediately to their dormitories while the teachers search for the dangerous creature. As the Gryffindors hurry toward their common room, Harry suddenly remembers that Hermione doesn't know about the troll. She's still hiding in the bathroom, completely unaware of the danger. Despite Ron's initial reluctance, he agrees that they must warn her before it's too late. The 2 boys slip away from their housemates and make their way through the empty corridors towards the bathroom where Hermione was last seen. The castle feels different in the darkness, full of shadows and strange sounds that make them jump at every creak and whisper. They find the bathroom and are relieved to hear Hermione's voice inside. But their relief turns to horror when they realize she's not alone. A massive troll, 12 feet tall and carrying a wooden club, has cornered her in the small space. The creature is as stupid as it is strong, but its size and weapon make it incredibly dangerous. Harry and Ron rush to help, using everything they've learned in their few weeks at Hogwarts. Working together, they manage to confuse and distract the troll until it knocks itself unconscious with its own club. The experience is terrifying, but also thrilling. They've faced real danger and protected their classmate. When the teachers arrive and find the 3 students with the unconscious troll, Hermione surprises everyone by taking full blame for the incident. She tells Professor McGonagall that she went looking for the troll herself, thinking she could handle it alone, and that Harry and Ron were simply trying to rescue her. This lie protects Harry and Ron from serious punishment while demonstrating Hermione's loyalty and courage. From that night forward, the 3 become inseparable friends, bound together by shared danger and mutual trust. The friendship between Harry, Ron, and Hermione grows stronger as autumn progresses at Hogwarts. They spend their free time together, helping each other with homework and exploring the castle's many mysteries. The ancient building seems to hold secrets around every corner, from moving staircases to hidden passages. One evening, as they return from the library, they take a wrong turn and find themselves in a corridor they've never seen before. The passage is darker than the rest of the castle, with fewer torches and an atmosphere that feels somehow forbidden. Dust covers the floor, suggesting that few people visit this area. At the end of the corridor stands a door, and to their surprise, it's unlocked despite being in such an isolated location. Hermione warns that they shouldn't enter, especially since Dumbledore specifically mentioned during the welcome feast that the 3rd-floor corridor is off-limits to students who don't wish to die a painful death. Their curiosity proves stronger than their caution, however, and they quietly push the door open. The room beyond is enormous, filled with shadows that their wand light barely penetrates. As they step inside, they hear a sound that makes their blood freeze, a low, rumbling growl that seems to come from everywhere at once. In the center of the room, they discover the source of the growling. An enormous dog sleeps fitfully, but this is no ordinary canine. The beast has 3 massive heads, each one the size of a large boulder, and its body is as big as a small dragon. Even in sleep, the creature looks terrifyingly powerful. The 3 friends realize immediately that this must be what's being guarded in the 3rd-floor corridor. Beneath the giant dog's paws, they can just make out the edges of a trapdoor set into the floor. Whatever lies beneath must be valuable indeed to require such a fearsome guardian. They back away slowly, careful not to wake the sleeping monster. Only when they're safely in the corridor with the door closed behind them do they dare to breathe normally again. Their hearts pound with the excitement of discovery and the terror of what might have happened if the dog had awakened. Back in the safety of the Gryffindor common room, the 3 friends discuss their discovery in hushed voices. They're certain that whatever the 3-headed dog is guarding must be connected to the break-in at Gringotts that happened on Harry's birthday, the same day he and Hagrid visited the bank. Hermione remembers reading about 3-headed dogs in their Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook. The creatures are extremely rare and come from Greece, where they're known to fall asleep when played music. This knowledge might prove useful if they ever need to get past the Guardian again. They speculate about what could be valuable enough to require such extreme protection. Harry remembers the small package that Hagrid retrieved from a vault at Gringotts, and how carefully the gamekeeper guarded it during their shopping trip to Diagon Alley. Their investigation hits a roadblock when they try to research what might be hidden beneath the trapdoor. The library contains thousands of books on magical objects and treasures, but without knowing exactly what they're looking for, they make little progress. Weeks pass as they search through dusty volumes during their free time. They read about magical artifacts, ancient spells, and legendary treasures, but nothing seems to connect to their mystery. The answer they seek remains frustratingly elusive. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. During a casual conversation with Hagrid, they mention their interest in famous magical objects, and the gamekeeper accidentally drops a crucial clue. He mentions someone named Nicholas Flamel in connection with whatever is being protected at Hogwarts. With this name to guide their search, Hermione throws herself into research with renewed energy. She scours every book she can find that mentions famous wizards and magical historians, determined to discover who Nicholas Flamel is and why his name is connected to their mystery. Christmas approaches quietly at Hogwarts, with snow falling gently over the castle grounds and decorations appearing throughout the Great Hall. Most students plan to return home for the holidays, but Harry has no desire to spend Christmas with the Dursleys. He chooses to remain at school, along with Ron, whose family is visiting his older brother Charlie in Romania. The castle feels different during the holidays, quieter and more peaceful, with only a handful of students remaining. The Great Hall needs only one table for meals, and the dormitories echo with emptiness. For Harry, this peaceful solitude is a welcome change from the constant activity of the school year. Christmas morning arrives with fresh snow covering the castle grounds. Harry wakes to find several packages at the foot of his bed, the first Christmas presents he's ever received. The sight of the wrapped gifts brings tears to his eyes, overwhelmed by the kindness of people who barely know him. Ron gives him a chocolate frog and apologizes for not having more money to spend. Hagrid has sent a wooden flute that he carved himself, which produces haunting melodies when played. Even Hermione, who went home for the holidays, has left him a book about famous Quidditch teams and players. The most mysterious gift has no card or signature. Inside the wrapping is a silvery cloak that feels like liquid starlight running through Harry's fingers. When he holds it up, he can see right through the fabric, as if it were made of water and shadows. A note tucked into the folds explains that the cloak belonged to Harry's father and has been in his family for generations. The writer suggests that Harry put it to good use, but doesn't reveal their identity. The handwriting seems familiar, though Harry can't quite place where he might have seen it before. Ron is amazed when Harry puts on the cloak and disappears completely from view. They realize this is an invisibility cloak, one of the rarest and most valuable magical objects in existence. Most invisibility cloaks fade over time or have limited effectiveness, but this one seems perfect. That very night, Harry decides to test his new invisibility cloak by exploring the castle while everyone sleeps. Wrapped in the silvery fabric, he wanders through corridors he's never seen before, invisible to the portraits and ghosts that drift through the darkness. His wandering takes him to a disused classroom filled with dusty desks and chairs. In the center of the room stands a magnificent mirror, as tall as a person and framed in ornate gold. Strange words are carved around the top, though Harry can't make out their meaning in the dim light. When Harry looks into the mirror, he gasps in amazement. Instead of his own reflection, he sees himself surrounded by other people. A woman with his own green eyes smiles at him lovingly, while a man with Harry's messy black hair puts his hand on the woman's shoulder. These must be his parents, James and Lily Potter, looking exactly as they did before they died. Harry stares transfixed at the image, drinking in every detail of their faces. Other figures crowd behind them, grandparents and relatives he's never met, but who share his features and expressions. He reaches toward the mirror, hoping to touch them, but his hand meets only cold glass. The people in the mirror wave and smile, but they remain forever beyond his reach. Harry spends hours gazing at his family, feeling both joy at seeing them and sadness at their absence. Night after night, Harry returns to the mirror under his invisibility cloak. He sits before it for hours, watching his parents and trying to memorize every detail. The experience becomes addictive, offering him something he's craved his entire life, a connection to the family he never knew. Ron eventually discovers Harry's secret when he follows his friend one night. When Ron looks in the mirror, however, he sees something completely different himself as head boy and Quidditch captain, accomplished and successful, while his brothers fade into the background. Their different visions puzzle both boys until Professor Dumbledore appears in the classroom, having discovered their nighttime visits. The wise headmaster explains that the mirror shows the deepest desires of the viewer's heart, but warns that it can be dangerous to dwell too long on dreams that can never become reality. After the Christmas holidays end and students return to Hogwarts, the search for information about Nicholas Flamel continues. Hermione has exhausted most of the library's resources without success, and the mystery seems as unsolvable as ever. The name tantalizes them with its familiarity, as if the answer lies just beyond their memory. The solution comes during a visit to Hagrid's hut on a cold February afternoon. The gamekeeper welcomes them warmly, serving tea and rock cakes that threaten to break their teeth. A dragon egg sits in a bowl on his table, though he tries to pretend it's nothing unusual. As they chat about school and classes, Hagrid mentions his work helping to protect whatever is hidden in the castle. He's clearly proud of his role in the security arrangements, though he tries to be discreet about the details. His contribution involves knowledge of magical creatures and their care. When the conversation turns to the various protections guarding the hidden object, Hagrid accidentally reveals that he's not the only teacher involved. Each professor has contributed their expertise: McGonagall with transfiguration, Flitwick with charms, Sprout with magical plants, and Snape with potions. Most importantly, he mentions that he discussed certain details with Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel when they were planning the defenses. The name slips out so naturally that Hagrid doesn't realize he's provided the crucial clue the children have been seeking for months. Hermione practically bounces with excitement, finally having confirmation that Nicholas Flamel is connected to whatever is being protected at Hogwarts. With renewed energy, she returns to her research, now certain that the answer exists somewhere in the library's vast collection. Armed with the knowledge that Nicholas Flamel is directly involved in the mystery, Hermione attacks her research with systematic determination. She focuses on books about famous alchemists and magical historians, cross-referencing every mention of the name with other clues they've gathered. The breakthrough comes when she discovers a brief mention in a book about 20th century magical achievements. Nicholas Flamel is identified as a medieval alchemist who achieved the greatest goal of his art, the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance that can transform any metal into pure gold and produce the elixir of life. The elixir of life grants immortality to those who drink it regularly, explaining how Nicholas Flamel has lived for over 600 years. He and his wife Perenelle are the only known people to possess the stone, making them incredibly wealthy and effectively immortal. Everything suddenly makes sense to the three friends. The Philosopher's Stone is exactly the type of object that would require maximum security and protection. Its power to create unlimited wealth and grant eternal life would make it irresistibly attractive to dark wizards seeking power. They realize that the stone must be what Hagrid retrieved from Gringotts on Harry's birthday, and what's now hidden beneath the three-headed dog. Someone tried to steal it from the bank, and when that failed, they turned their attention to Hogwarts, where it's supposedly safer. The identity of the potential thief becomes clearer when they consider recent events. Someone has been trying to get past the stone's protections, and their suspicions focus on Professor Snape, who has shown obvious hostility toward Harry and has access to all areas of the castle. They remember how Snape's robes caught fire during Harry's first Quidditch match, when someone was jinxing his broomstick. Hermione had assumed Snape was trying to hurt Harry, but now they wonder if someone else was the culprit and Snape was actually trying to help. The pieces of the puzzle begin forming a clearer picture, though many questions remain unanswered. What they know for certain is that the Philosopher's Stone is hidden at Hogwarts. Someone is trying to steal it, and the situation is becoming increasingly dangerous for everyone involved. The day of Harry's first Quidditch match arrives with crisp autumn air and excited chatter throughout the castle. Students from all houses gather on the pitch, their scarves and banners creating a colourful display of house loyalty. The atmosphere buzzes with anticipation as everyone prepares to see the youngest Seeker in a century take flight. In the Gryffindor changing rooms, Oliver Wood gives his team a final pep talk, emphasizing the importance of this match against Slytherin. The rivalry between the two houses adds extra intensity to every game, and Wood reminds his players that they're not just competing for points, but for house pride. Harry struggles with pre-match nerves as he puts on his Quidditch robes and picks up his Nimbus 2000 broomstick. The sleek racing broom feels perfectly balanced in his hands, but the weight of expectations makes his stomach flutter with anxiety. Everyone expects him to catch the snitch and win the game for Gryffindor. Walking onto the pitch, Harry is amazed by the noise and energy of the crowd. Students cheer and wave banners, while teachers watch from the staff box with obvious interest. The Slytherin team looks confident and intimidating in their green robes, especially their captain, Marcus Flint, whose scowl suggests he plans to make Harry's debut as unpleasant as possible. Madam Hooch releases the golden snitch, and Harry watches it zip away into the bright sky, its tiny wings beating so fast they're almost invisible. The Quaffle and Bludgers are released next, and suddenly the match begins with players soaring in all directions across the pitch. From high above the action, Harry searches for the snitch while trying to avoid the chaos below. Bludgers whistle past his head, chased by beaters with clubs, while chasers weave between the goal posts attempting to score. The speed and intensity of professional Quidditch far exceed anything he experienced during practice. The crowd's roar rises and falls with the action, creating a constant background of noise and excitement. Harry spots the snitch several times, but loses it again in the confusion of 22 players flying at high speed. Each near miss increases his determination to prove himself worthy of his position on the team. Midway through the match, something goes terribly wrong with Harry's broomstick. The Nimbus 2000, which had been responding perfectly to his commands, suddenly begins bucking and rolling like a wild animal. Harry grips the handle desperately as the broom tries to throw him off. The crowd gasps in horror as Harry's broom climbs high into the air before diving toward the ground, completely out of control. He hangs on with just his hands, his legs dangling dangerously as the broom spins and jerks unpredictably. The match continues around him, but all attention focuses on his desperate struggle. From the stands, Hermione watches through Hagrid's binoculars and notices something suspicious in the teacher's box. Professor Snape stares intently at Harry without blinking, his lips moving in what appears to be a continuous incantation. His fixed concentration suggests he's maintaining a complex spell. Hermione quickly explains the situation to Ron and Hagrid, pointing out Snape's suspicious behavior. They agree that the potions master must be jinxing Harry's broom, trying to hurt or kill the boy during the match. Immediate action is necessary to save Harry's life. While Ron and Hagrid debate what to do, Hermione takes matters into her own hands. She slips away from her seat and makes her way around the stadium towards the teacher's box, moving carefully to avoid detection. Her plan requires perfect timing and considerable courage. Reaching the area beneath the teacher's box, Hermione uses a simple fire-making spell to set the hem of Snape's robes ablaze. The small flame is barely noticeable at first, but it quickly draws Snape's attention away from Harry. The professor breaks his concentration to deal with his burning clothes. The moment Snape's attention wavers, Harry's broom returns to normal behavior, allowing him to climb back on safely and regain control. The crowd cheers with relief as the immediate danger passes, though many spectators don't understand exactly what happened or how close Harry came to disaster. Hermione's quick thinking has saved Harry's life, though she takes no credit for her heroic action. She slips back to her seat without anyone noticing her absence, allowing others to believe that Harry somehow regained control of his broom through his own skill and determination. With his broom working normally again, Harry can focus on finding the golden snitch and ending the match. He spots the tiny golden ball hovering near the ground and dives toward it at maximum speed, determined to catch it just before anything else goes wrong. The Slytherin seeker, Terence Higgs, notices Harry's dive and follows, but his broom is no match for the Nimbus 2000. Harry reaches the snitch first, closing his fingers around its struggling wings just as he pulls up from his dive. The crowd erupts in celebration as Gryffindor wins the match. In the aftermath of the game, Harry, Ron, and Hermione discuss what happened with Snape. They're now convinced that the potions master is after the Philosopher's Stone and willing to kill Harry to achieve his goal. The evidence seems clear. Snape's suspicious behavior and the timing of the broom malfunction can't be coincidental. Hagrid listens to their concerns, but dismisses their suspicions about Snape. He insists that no Hogwarts teacher would try to hurt a student, and that they are letting their imaginations run away with them. The gamekeeper's faith in his colleagues seems unshakable, despite the evidence they present. As winter deepens at Hogwarts, the three friends continue investigating the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone. They observe Professor Snape more carefully, noting his frequent absences from meals and his tendency to lurk in corridors near the third-floor area. His behavior seems increasingly suspicious as the weeks pass. Their surveillance reveals that Snape often limps slightly, favoring his right leg, as if nursing an injury. When they mention this to Hagrid, the gamekeeper accidentally reveals that Snape was bitten by Fluffy, the three-headed dog, while checking on the other protections around Halloween. This information convinces them further that Snape is planning to steal the stone. If he was injured while trying to get past Fluffy, it suggests he's already made at least one attempt to reach whatever lies beneath the trapdoor. The fact that he survived an encounter with the massive dog only makes him seem more dangerous. They begin to piece together a timeline of events. starting with the failed break-in at Gringotts and continuing through various incidents at Hogwarts. Each piece of evidence seems to point towards Snape as the culprit, though they still can't understand why he would risk everything to steal the stone. During their research, they learn more about the various protections guarding the Philosopher's Stone. Besides Fluffy, there are magical challenges created by each of the teachers, forming a series of obstacles that would deter all but the most determined and skilled wizards. The three friends worry that Snape's knowledge of the school and his relationships with the other teachers give him advantages that an outside thief wouldn't have. He knows which protections exist and might even know how to bypass some of them safely. Spring arrives at Hogwarts with warmer days and longer evenings, allowing students to spend more time outdoors enjoying the castle grounds. Harry, Ron, and Hermione often visit Hagrid in his hut, where the gamekeeper welcomes them with tea and conversation about magical creatures. During one such visit, they notice that Hagrid seems unusually excited about something. He keeps glancing toward his fireplace, where something appears to be warming near the flames. When they ask about it, Hagrid reluctantly reveals that he's acquired a dragon egg through a game of cards with a stranger in the village. The egg is enormous, about the size of a football, with a dull black shell that occasionally glows from within. Hagrid explains that it's a Norwegian ridgeback, one of the more dangerous dragon breeds, though he speaks of it with the fondness of a proud parent preparing for the arrival of a new baby. Ron and Hermione try to explain that keeping dragons is illegal in Britain, and that Hagrid could face serious consequences if discovered. Dragons are extremely dangerous, even as babies, and Hagrid's wooden hut would never contain a growing dragon safely. Hagrid dismisses their concerns with characteristic optimism, insisting that he's read everything about dragon care and feels completely prepared for the responsibility. He shows them books about dragon behavior and feeding, though most of the information seems theoretical rather than practical. The three friends exchange worried glances, recognizing that Hagrid's enthusiasm has overwhelmed his common sense. They love the gentle giant, but they also understand that his fascination with dangerous creatures often leads him into trouble. As they sit around Hagrid's table, the egg begins to crack and move. Small pieces of shell fall away, revealing glimpses of the creature inside. Hagrid watches with delighted anticipation, completely focused on the hatching process. Within hours, the dragon egg hatches to reveal a baby Norwegian ridgeback that Hagrid immediately names Norbert. The tiny dragon is surprisingly cute, about the size of a large cat, with wet wings and big orange eyes that blink in the firelight. Despite its small size, Norbert already shows signs of the fierce temperament that makes dragons so dangerous. It breathes small puffs of flame when excited and tries to bite everything within reach, including Hagrid's fingers, when he attempts to pet it. Hagrid is completely enchanted with his new pet, feeding it brandy and chicken blood while cooing over its every movement. He seems oblivious to the obvious problems that Norbert's presence creates, from the fire hazard to the inevitable questions when the dragon grows larger. Over the following days, Norbert grows at an alarming rate, doubling in size almost daily. The dragon's appetite increases correspondingly, requiring more food than Hagrid can reasonably provide. Its flames grow hotter and more frequent, scorching furniture and creating obvious fire risks. The three friends visit regularly, partly out of concern for Hagrid and partly from fascination with the illegal dragon. They help feed Norbert and clean up after its increasingly destructive behavior. though they continue to worry about the inevitable consequences. Hagrid's attempts at secrecy become more difficult as Norbert grows. The dragon's roars can be heard from outside the hut, and smoke often rises from the chimney at odd hours. Several students comment on strange sounds coming from the gamekeeper's residence. Ron receives a particularly nasty bite when Norbert snaps at him during a feeding, leaving his hand swollen and infected. The injury requires medical attention, though Ron tries to hide the true cause from Madame Pumphrey in the hospital wing. The situation with Norbert reaches a crisis point when it becomes clear that the dragon cannot remain at Hogwarts much longer. Hagrid's wooden hut is already showing signs of fire damage, and the dragon's size makes concealment increasingly impossible. Fortunately, Ron's older brother, Charlie, works with dragons in Romania and agrees to arrange for Norbert's safe transport to a dragon sanctuary. The plan requires careful coordination, as the dragon must be smuggled out of the castle without detection. Charlie's friends will meet them at the top of the tallest tower at midnight, using trained dragons to carry Norbert away to safety. The timing must be perfect, and the three friends volunteer to help Hagrid transport the dragon through the castle under cover of darkness. Using Harry's invisibility cloak, they manage to carry the crated dragon through the corridors and up numerous staircases to the designated meeting point. The journey is exhausting and nerve-wracking, as Norbert's weight and occasional movements make the crate difficult to handle quietly. The handover goes smoothly, with Charlie's colleagues efficiently loading Norbert onto their transport dragon for the journey to Romania. The young dragon seems excited by the prospect of flying, and Hagrid tearfully says goodbye to his beloved pet. Their relief at successfully completing the mission is short-lived, however. As they descend from the tower, they realize that Harry's invisibility cloak was left behind during the dragon transfer. Without its protection, they're completely visible to anyone who might be wandering the corridors. Professor McGonagall waits for them in the entrance hall, having been alerted by Draco Malfoy, who somehow learned about their nighttime activities. Malfoy stands beside her with a satisfied smirk, clearly enjoying their predicament. The punishment is severe, 50 points from Gryffindor for each student caught out of bed, plus detention for everyone involved. The massive point loss destroys Gryffindor's chances of winning the House Cup, making Harry, Ron, and Hermione extremely unpopular with their housemates. A few nights later, Harry, Hermione, Ron, and Draco Malfoy report to Hagrid's hut for their detention. The gamekeeper greets them with less than his usual warmth, still upset about having to give up Norbert and disappointed in their reckless behavior that led to their capture. Hagrid explains that their punishment will involve helping him with important work in the Forbidden Forest, the dark woodland that borders the Hogwarts grounds. Students are normally forbidden from entering these woods alone, as they contain dangerous creatures and magical plants that can be deadly to the unwary. The forest feels different at night, filled with mysterious sounds and shadows that shift between the ancient trees. Strange calls echo in the distance, and occasionally they glimpse glowing eyes watching them from the undergrowth. Even Hagrid seems more alert than usual, his crossbow ready as he leads them along narrow paths. Their task involves investigating a disturbing mystery that has been troubling the forest's inhabitants for several weeks. Something has been killing unicorns, the most pure and magical creatures in the woodland, and drinking their blood a crime so terrible that it curses the perpetrator. Hagrid explains that unicorn blood can keep someone alive even if they are near death, but the cost is terrible. Anyone who kills such an innocent creature and drinks its blood will live only a half-life, cursed forever. Only someone with nothing to lose would commit such a desperate act. They split into 2 groups to cover more ground in their search. Hagrid takes Ron and Hermione along one path, while Harry goes with Draco and Hagrid's dog, Fang, along another route. The separation makes everyone nervous, as the forest seems even more threatening when they're not all together. Harry's group discovers traces of unicorn blood along their path, silvery drops that gleam in the moonlight, leading deeper into the darkest part of the forest. Fang whimpers nervously as they follow the trail, his ears flat against his head and his tail tucked between his legs. Following the blood trail through the dense forest, Harry's group comes upon a clearing where a heartbreaking sight awaits them. A beautiful unicorn lies motionless on the moss-covered ground, its white coat stained with silver blood and its horn dim with death. Crouched over the fallen creature is a dark figure wearing a hooded cloak. The figure drinks greedily from the unicorn's wounds, making horrible slurping sounds that echo through the silent forest. The scene is so disturbing that Harry feels sick just watching it. Draco Malfoy screams in terror and runs away, abandoning Harry without a second thought. Fang the dog follows Draco, leaving Harry alone to face whatever this creature might be. The hooded figure slowly raises its head and begins moving toward Harry with obvious malicious intent. Harry's scar begins to burn with excruciating pain, more intense than he's ever experienced before. The pain is so severe that he falls to his knees, clutching his forehead and struggling to remain conscious. Something about this hooded figure causes his scar to react violently. Just as the figure reaches toward him, a centaur gallops into the clearing, rearing up on his hind legs and driving the hooded creature away. The noble half-human, half-horse creature stands protectively over Harry, his bow drawn and arrow nocked in case the figure returns. The centaur introduces himself as Firenze and helps Harry to his feet, though the boy's scar continues to throb painfully. Firenze explains that the hooded figure was drinking unicorn blood to sustain a cursed existence, surviving while seeking something that would restore full life and power. As they walk through the forest together, Firenze reveals disturbing information about the hooded figure and its connection to Harry. The centaur explains that the creature was once a powerful dark wizard who lost his body when he tried to kill Harry as a baby. This wizard, whose name Firenze speaks reluctantly, is Lord Voldemort, the same Dark Lord who murdered Harry's parents and tried to kill him. The protection that saved baby Harry also destroyed Voldemort's physical form, leaving him as little more than a vengeful spirit. For the past 10 years, Voldemort has existed in a cursed state, neither alive nor dead, searching for a way to return to power. The unicorn blood provides temporary sustenance, keeping his spirit anchored to the world, while he seeks a more permanent solution to his problems. Firenze warns Harry that Voldemort will never stop trying to kill him, as Harry represents the greatest threat to the Dark Lord's plans for power. The boy who lived has become a symbol of hope for good wizards everywhere, and a source of humiliation for Voldemort. The centaur also hints that Voldemort's current activities at Hogwarts are connected to something being kept at the school, something that could restore his full power if he manages to obtain it. Harry immediately thinks of the Philosopher's Stone and its power to grant eternal life. As they reach the edge of the forest where Hagrid waits with the others, Firenze delivers a final warning. He tells Harry to be very careful in the coming days, as great dangers lie ahead. The stars suggest that important events are approaching, though their exact nature remains unclear. Hagrid is relieved to see Harry safe and scolds Firenze for revealing so much information to a young student. The gamekeeper believes children should be protected from such dark knowledge, but the centaur argues that Harry needs to understand the dangers he faces. Back in the Gryffindor common room, Harry shares Firenze's revelations with Ron and Hermione. The three friends finally understand the full scope of the danger threatening Hogwarts and the wizarding world. Voldemort isn't just after the Philosopher's Stone for wealth, he needs it to return to full power. They realize that their earlier suspicions about Professor Snape, while logical, may have been misdirected. The real threat comes from Voldemort himself, who has somehow found a way to infiltrate Hogwarts and attempt to steal the stone. The next day brings alarming news that confirms their worst fears. Professor Dumbledore has been called away from Hogwarts on urgent business by the Ministry of Magic. The headmaster's absence removes the most powerful protection the stone had, leaving it vulnerable to attack. That evening, Harry overhears Professor McGonagall discussing the situation with Professor Snape. She expresses concern about Dumbledore's departure and the possibility that someone might try to steal the stone while the headmaster is away. Snape assures her that the remaining protections are sufficient, but McGonagall seems unconvinced. The three friends spend a sleepless night discussing their options. They're convinced that Voldemort will make his move soon, possibly that very night, while Dumbledore is away and cannot protect the stone. The other teachers don't seem to understand the immediate nature of the threat. By morning, they've made their decision. If the adults won't act to protect the stone, then they must do it themselves. They're just children, but they're also the only ones to fully understand what Voldemort is planning and how close he is to achieving his goal. They spend the day gathering information about the protections guarding the stone, using their knowledge of each teacher's specialties to prepare for the challenges they'll face. They know they're taking an enormous risk, but they also know that doing nothing could doom the entire wizarding world. That night, under cover of Harry's invisibility cloak, the three friends make their way through the castle towards the third-floor corridor. The familiar passages feel different in the darkness, filled with shadows and silence that make every footstep seem too loud. They reach the forbidden corridor without incident and approach the door that guards Fluffy, the three-headed dog. To their surprise, the door stands slightly ajar, and soft music drifts from within. Someone has already put Fluffy to sleep and entered the chamber beyond. Inside, they find the enormous dog, slumped unconscious, its three heads resting peacefully on its paws. A magical harp plays itself in the corner, its enchanted melody maintaining the spell that keeps the guardian asleep. The trapdoor beneath Fluffy's paws is open, revealing a dark shaft leading downward. They debate briefly whether to continue, knowing that they're following in the footsteps of someone who could be Voldemort himself. The danger is obvious, but they've come too far to turn back now. One by one, they lower themselves through the trapdoor and drop into the darkness below. They land on something soft and yielding that breaks their fall, though in the darkness they can't see what it is. As their eyes adjust, they realize they're sitting on a mass of rope-like tendrils that writhe and move beneath them. The plant seems almost alive, reaching toward them with obvious intent. Hermione quickly identifies the plant as Devil's Snare, a magical species that strangles its victims when they struggle. The more they fight against it, the tighter it holds them. The key to escape is to remain calm and still, allowing the plant to loosen its grip gradually. Ron panics as the tendrils wrap around his arms and legs, his struggles only making the plant more aggressive. Harry tries to follow Hermione's advice, but it's difficult to remain calm while being slowly strangled by a malevolent plant. Hermione remembers that Devil's Snare dislikes light and fire, preferring the darkness of dungeons and caves. She uses a bluebell flame spell to create bright light, and the plant immediately recoils, releasing them from its deadly embrace. They stumble away from the writhing mass and continue deeper into the underground chambers. The next chamber contains hundreds of flying keys, fluttering through the air like a swarm of glittering birds. Their wings beat constantly as they circle the room, creating a constant buzzing sound that fills the space. At the far end of the chamber stands a locked door, clearly requiring one specific key from the magical flock. 3 broomsticks wait nearby, obviously intended to help someone catch the correct key. The challenge requires not just flying skill, but also the ability to identify the right key among hundreds of nearly identical options. Harry examines the lock carefully, noting its size and shape. Among all the flying keys, they need to find one with a broken wing, the key that opened this door when whoever came before them passed through. The damaged key will be trying to fly despite its injury, making it distinguishable from the others. While Ron and Hermione mount their broomsticks awkwardly, Harry takes to the air with his usual grace. The other keys seem to sense their intentions and become more aggressive, diving and swooping to prevent them from catching their target. Harry spots the damaged key struggling to keep up with its companions, its broken wing making its flight erratic and painful. He pursues it through the swarm of other keys, dodging their attempts to block his path or knock him from his broomstick. The chase becomes increasingly frantic as more keys join in the defense of their injured companion. Harry has to use all his Quidditch skills to avoid being overwhelmed by the angry flock, while keeping his target in sight. Finally, Harry manages to grab the broken-winged key, clutching it tightly as he dives towards the door. Ron and Hermione quickly unlock the barrier, and they rush through, slamming it shut behind them, just as the furious keys crash against the other side. The third chamber contains a giant chessboard with pieces as tall as the children themselves. The black and white squares stretch across the floor, and the chess pieces stand ready for battle, their carved faces stern and warlike. This is clearly Professor McGonagall's contribution to the stone's protection. The rules are simple, but dangerous. They must play their way across the board. But the chess pieces will destroy any piece they capture. The stakes are higher than in any normal game, as the players risk serious injury or death if their piece is taken. Ron steps forward with confidence, his years of playing chess with his brothers having prepared him for this moment. He quickly assesses the board and determines that they must take the places of 3 white pieces, a bishop, a knight, and a rook, to have any chance of reaching the other side. Harry becomes a bishop, and Hermione takes the position of a rook, while Ron replaces a knight on horseback. The black pieces eye them menacingly, their weapons ready for battle. The game begins with the traditional opening moves, but each captured piece is smashed to rubble by its attacker. Ron proves to be a masterful chess player, thinking several moves ahead and directing his friends around the board with strategic precision. His understanding of the game is intuitive and brilliant, far surpassing anything he demonstrates in his academic subjects. The game progresses with mounting tension as pieces are captured and destroyed on both sides. The sound of breaking stone echoes through the chamber with each move, reminding them of the violence that awaits any mistake in their strategy. As the game nears its conclusion, Ron realizes that the only way to achieve checkmate requires a terrible sacrifice. He must allow his knight to be taken by the Black Queen, putting himself directly in harm's way to create the winning position on for Harry. Despite Harry and Hermione's protests, Ron makes the necessary move, directing his horse forward into the Queen's path. The Black Queen strikes with brutal efficiency, and Ron falls unconscious to the floor, bleeding from his injuries, but having secured victory for his friends. Heartbroken but determined to continue, Harry and Hermione leave the unconscious Ron and proceed to the next challenge. They find themselves in a chamber filled with 7 bottles of various shapes and sizes, each containing a different colored liquid. The moment they step into the room, flames spring up behind and in front of them, trapping them between walls of fire. The flames are magical and cannot be extinguished by normal means. They can only be passed safely by drinking the correct potion from one of the bottles. A scroll of parchment lies on a table beside the bottles, containing a riddle written in Professor Snape's careful handwriting. The puzzle requires logical thinking rather than magical knowledge, challenging the solver to deduce which potions are safe and which are deadly. Hermione reads the riddle carefully, her analytical mind working through the clues with systematic precision. She mutters to herself as she eliminates possibilities, using the given information to narrow down the options until only one solution remains. The riddle reveals that some bottles contain poison, others contain harmless wine. One will allow safe passage through the flames ahead, and another will allow retreat through the flames behind. The challenge lies in determining which is which, based on the cryptic clues provided. After several minutes of intense concentration, Hermione announces that she's solved the puzzle. She identifies which bottle will allow Harry to proceed towards the stone and which will take her back to help Ron. The bottles contain only enough potion for one person each. Harry drinks the potion that will take him forward, feeling ice spread through his body as the magical liquid takes effect. Hermione takes the bottle that will allow her to retreat, though they both know that this separation might be permanent if Harry doesn't survive what lies ahead. With a final embrace, they part ways, Hermione returning to help Ron and summon assistance, while Harry walks through the flames toward his final confrontation with whoever is trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone. Beyond the flames, Harry finds himself in the final chamber, a large room dominated by the Mirror of Erist that he remembers from his Christmas wanderings. The familiar mirror stands in the center of the space, its ornate frame gleaming in the torchlight. To Harry's amazement, Professor Quirrell stands before the mirror, no longer the nervous, stammering teacher from Defense Against the Dark Arts class. His demeanor has changed completely. He appears confident, focused, and dangerous in ways that Harry never suspected. Quirrell turns to greet Harry with a cold smile, revealing that he has been the one trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone all along. The mild-mannered professor was nothing but an act, designed to deflect suspicion while he worked to obtain the stone for his master. Harry's scar begins to burn as Quirrell explains that he has been serving Lord Voldemort since long before coming to Hogwarts. The professor's apparent nervousness and incompetence were carefully crafted disguises to hide his true nature and intentions. The revelation that Quirrell, not Snape, has been the enemy all along shocks Harry completely. All their careful deductions and suspicious observations had focused on the wrong person, while the real threat taught them in class every day. Quirrell reveals that he was the one who tried to kill Harry during the Quidditch match, jinxing his broomstick, while Snape actually tried to save him with the countercurse. The potions master's suspicious behavior was caused by his attempts to protect Harry, not harm him. Similarly, Quirrell was responsible for letting the troll into the castle on Halloween, creating a distraction while he investigated the stone's other protections. Every incident they blamed on Snape was actually Quirrell's work, carefully planned to advance his master's goals. Standing before the mirror of Erist, Professor Quirrell no longer resembles the timid, nervous teacher that Harry has known all year. His transformation is complete gone, are the stammering voice and trembling hands, replaced by cold confidence and obvious malice. Quirrell explains that he has been trying to retrieve the Philosopher's Stone from the mirror for some time, but the enchantment protecting it is too clever for him to solve alone. The mirror shows him what he desires most, presenting the stone to his master, but he cannot determine how to actually obtain it. He reveals that Dumbledore must have placed the stone inside the mirror using magic that Quirrell cannot break or bypass. Only someone who wanted to find the stone, but not use it for selfish purposes, would be able to retrieve it from the mirror's protection. Harry realizes that this is why Quirrell needs him. The professor believes that Harry's fame and supposed desire for glory will allow him to see how to get the stone from the mirror. Quirrell plans to force Harry to look into the mirror and tell him what he sees. The burning in Harry's scar intensifies as Quirrell speaks, becoming almost unbearable when the professor mentions his master. Something about Voldemort's presence causes Harry physical pain, a connection forged when the Dark Lord tried to kill him as a baby. Quirrell grows impatient with the mirror's refusal to reveal its secrets to him. He has tried everything he can think of, commands, threats, pleading, but the enchanted glass responds only by showing him his heart's desire, without allowing him to achieve it. Harry stalls for time, hoping that Hermione has been able to summon help and that Dumbledore might arrive before it's too late. He asks questions about Quirrell's betrayal, trying to understand how his teacher became a servant of Lord Voldemort. As Harry continues to delay, a new voice joins the conversation, cold, high, and filled with malice beyond anything Harry has ever heard. The voice seems to come from Quirrell himself, but it clearly belongs to someone else entirely. The voice commands Quirrell to use Harry immediately, showing no patience for the professor's explanations or attempts at subtlety. This voice carries absolute authority, and Quirrell obeys it with obvious fear and reverence. Harry realizes with growing horror that Lord Voldemort is somehow present in this room, speaking through or with Professor Quirrell. The Dark Lord spirit has found a way to possess or control the weak-willed teacher, using him as a vessel for his own purposes. Quirrell turns around slowly, and Harry sees the most terrible sight of his young life. On the back of the professor's head, where his turban usually covers, is another face, twisted, serpentine, and filled with red eyes that burn with hatred. This is Lord Voldemort, or what remains of him after his body was destroyed 10 years ago. The Dark Lord spirit has been sharing Quirrell's body, hiding beneath the professor's turban while directing his servant's actions from within. Voldemort's face speaks directly to Harry, explaining that this is what he has become, a shadow of his former self, forced to share another's body and drink unicorn blood to maintain even this cursed existence. The Philosopher's Stone represents his only hope of regaining independent life and full power. The sight of Voldemort's face causes Harry's scar to burn with excruciating intensity, the pain so severe that he can barely think clearly. The connection between them, forged by the failed killing curse, creates agony whenever they are in close proximity. Harry tries to back away, but Quirrell blocks his path to the door. The professor's body moves normally from the front, but Harry knows that Voldemort's face watches him from behind, plotting his death with patient malevolence. Voldemort orders Quirrell to force Harry to look into the mirror of Erist and reveal what he sees. Harry approaches the mirror reluctantly, knowing that any delay might be his last chance to prevent the stone from falling into the Dark Lord's hands. Looking into the mirror, Harry sees his reflection reaching into its pocket and pulling out a red stone the size of a large egg. His reflection winks and puts the stone back into his pocket, and Harry feels the weight of the real stone appear in his own pocket. The mirror has given him the stone because he wanted to find it, but not use it for himself. Unlike Quirrell, who desires the stone for selfish purposes, Harry wants only to prevent it from being stolen. This pure intention allows the mirror's enchantment to work in his favor. Harry lies to Quirrell, claiming that he sees himself winning the House Cup for Gryffindor. The professor seems confused by this response, unable to understand how such a vision relates to the Philosopher's Stone. Voldemort, however, suspects that Harry is lying. The Dark Lord commands Quirrell to kill Harry, no longer having use for the boy if he won't cooperate. Quirrell advances with his hands outstretched, ready to strangle Harry or break his neck with his bare hands. When Quirrell grabs Harry's arm, something extraordinary happens. The professor's hand begins to burn and blister as if touching red-hot metal. Quirrell screams in agony and releases Harry immediately, staring at his damaged hand in confusion and pain. Harry realizes that Quirrell cannot touch him without suffering terrible burns. Some protection surrounds Harry, a magic that causes physical harm to anyone who tries to hurt him with violent intent. This is the same power that destroyed Voldemort 10 years ago. Fighting through the pain in his scar, Harry grabs Quirrell's face with both hands. The professor screams as his skin burns and blisters wherever Harry touches him. The protection that saved Harry as a baby continues to defend him, turning his very touch into a weapon against those who would harm him. Harry awakens in the hospital wing several days later, his body aching and his scar tender, but no longer burning with agony. Sunlight streams through the windows, and beside his bed sits a pile of sweets and gifts from well-wishers throughout the school. Professor Dumbledore sits in a chair nearby, his blue eyes twinkling with relief and warmth. The headmaster explains that he arrived just in time to pull Quirrell away from Harry, though the damage to the possessed professor was already fatal. Quirrell died when Voldemort's spirit abandoned his body, no longer finding him useful after his failure to obtain the stone. The Dark Lord fled, reduced once again to his previous state of near-death existence, though he will undoubtedly seek another way to return to power. Dumbledore reveals that Harry's protection comes from his mother's sacrifice. When Lily Potter died to save her infant son, her love created a powerful magical shield that has guarded Harry ever since. This love-based magic cannot be overcome by hatred or violence. The headmaster explains that Voldemort cannot understand or appreciate the power of love, which makes it his greatest weakness. The Dark Lord's inability to comprehend such sacrifice leaves him vulnerable to magic that he cannot counter or replicate. Harry learns that the Philosopher's Stone has been destroyed to prevent future attempts at theft. Nicolas Flamel agreed to this decision, though it means that he and his wife will die when their remaining elixir of life runs out. the ancient alchemist believes that death is simply the next great adventure. Dumbledore answers Harry's questions about the stone's protections, confirming that each teacher contributed their expertise to the challenges. The protections were designed to delay intruders rather than stop them completely, giving Dumbledore time to return and intervene. The headmaster admits that he suspected Quirrell from early in the school year, though he couldn't prove his guilt without endangering students. Dumbledore's sudden departure from the castle was a trap, designed to force Quirrell into action when he thought the headmaster couldn't interfere. As Harry recovers in the hospital wing, he learns that Ron and Hermione also survived their ordeal, though Ron required several days of treatment for his injuries from the giant chess game. The three friends are reunited with joy and relief, comparing their experiences and marveling at their survival. The end of the school year approaches with final exams and the awarding of the House Cup. Gryffindor appears to be in last place, their chances destroyed by the points lost during the dragon incident and other rule-breaking throughout the year. At the year-end feast, the Great Hall is decorated in Slytherin's green and silver colors, celebrating their apparent victory in the House Cup competition. The Slytherin students appear smug and confident, already celebrating their success. Dumbledore rises to address the school, acknowledging Slytherin's point total and their mathematical victory. However, he announces that certain recent events require additional point awards that were not previously calculated into the totals. The Headmaster Awards points to Ron for the best game of chess that Hogwarts has seen in many years, recognizing his strategic brilliance and personal sacrifice. Hermione receives points for her logical reasoning and calm thinking under pressure during the potion riddle. Harry receives points for outstanding courage and nerve in facing dangers that would challenge much older wizards. These awards bring Gryffindor very close to Slytherin's total, but still leave them slightly behind in the final standings. Then Dumbledore awards final points to Neville Longbottom, recognizing that it sometimes takes more courage to stand up to friends than to enemies. Neville's attempt to stop Harry, Ron, and Hermione from leaving the common room showed moral courage that deserved recognition. These last points put Gryffindor over the top, winning them the House Cup in dramatic fashion. The Great Hall erupts in celebration as the decorations change from green and silver to red and gold, marking Gryffindor's unexpected victory. The school year ends with the Hogwarts Express carrying students back to London for the summer holidays. The train journey passes quickly, filled with excited conversations about the year's adventures and plans for the upcoming vacation. Harry faces the prospect of returning to Privet Drive with mixed feelings. He has learned so much about himself and his heritage, discovered friendship and belonging, and proven his courage in ways he never imagined possible. The mundane world of the Dursleys seems almost unreal after his magical year. On the train, Ron and Hermione exchange addresses and make plans to stay in touch during the summer break. They promise to write letters and share any interesting magical experiences they might have while away from school. The bonds of friendship forged through danger and adventure will endure the separation. Hermione warns Harry that the Dursleys probably won't allow him to use magic during the holidays, but she suggests he might hint at his magical abilities if they treat him too badly. The thought of his aunt and uncle's reaction to learning about his magical education brings a small smile to Harry's face. As the train pulls into King's Cross Station, Harry sees the familiar, unpleasant sight of Uncle Vernon waiting on the platform. The large man scowls as usual, clearly unhappy about having to collect his unwanted nephew from what he considers a school for freaks and misfits. Harry gathers his belongings, including Hedwig's cage and his trunk full of spell books and magical supplies. These possessions represent his true identity and his real home, not the house on Privet Drive, but the world of magic, where he truly belongs. He says goodbye to Ron and Hermione, with promises to see them again when the new school year begins. The parting is bittersweet, as he knows the summer will feel long and lonely without his best friends beside him to share in magical discoveries and adventures. Walking towards the barrier between the magical and muggle worlds, Harry reflects on the incredible year he's experienced. He discovered his true heritage, found his place in the wizarding world, made the best friends of his life, and helped save the Philosopher's Stone from Lord Voldemort's grasp. Uncle Vernon greets him with his usual gruffness, complaining about the inconvenience of the journey to London, and demanding that Harry not display any of his freakishness during the ride home. Harry nods politely, but inside he feels confident and strong in ways the Dursleys cannot understand. As they drive away from London toward Little Whinging, Harry touches the letter in his pocket, a note from Hagrid, reminding him that he can always count on friends at Hogwarts who care about him. The gamekeeper's message includes a gentle warning that the Dursleys are not to know about Harry's magical abilities being restricted during the holidays. The familiar streets of Privet Drive come into view, looking exactly as they did when Harry left for Hogwarts nearly a year ago. The neat houses with their perfect lawns and drawn curtains represent a world that once seemed normal to Harry, but now feels artificial and limiting. Uncle Vernon carries Harry's trunk into the house with obvious distaste, muttering complaints about its weight and the strange sounds coming from within. Aunt Petunia eyes Harry's owl suspiciously, clearly uncomfortable with having such an obviously magical creature in her pristine home. Dudley has grown even larger during Harry's absence, if such a thing were possible. He eyes his cousin with a mixture of wariness and curiosity, having heard whispered conversations between his parents about Harry's school and the strange abilities he might have developed there. As Harry settles back into his small bedroom, no longer the cupboard under the stairs, but still far from welcoming, he thinks about the friends and teachers waiting for him at Hogwarts. The knowledge that he has a real home to return to makes the prospect of summer on Privet Drive much more bearable. That first evening back with the Dursleys passes quietly, with the family tiptoeing around Harry as if he might suddenly produce a wand and hex them all. Their nervous behavior amuses Harry, though he's careful not to let his amusement show too obviously. In his room that night, Harry writes his first letter to Ron and Hermione, describing his return to the Muggle world and the Dursleys' obvious discomfort with his presence. He tells Hedwig to be ready for important mail deliveries throughout the summer, maintaining his connection to the wizarding world even while trapped in Little Whinging. Looking out his bedroom window at the ordinary suburban street, Harry no longer feels like the unwanted, freakish boy who once slept in the cupboard under the stairs. He knows who he really is, Harry Potter, the boy who lived, a Gryffindor, and someone with true friends who care about him. The summer stretches ahead, filled with the prospect of returning letters from Ron and Hermione, secret magic practice when the Dursleys aren't watching, and the wonderful knowledge that come September, he'll board the Hogwarts Express once again for another year of magical education and adventure. As Harry drifts off to sleep in his narrow bed, he dreams not of the Dursleys or Privet Drive, but of Hogwarts Castle, with its moving staircases, talking portraits, and the warm glow of the Gryffindor common room fire. In just a few months, he'll be home again, ready for whatever new mysteries and challenges await him in his second year. The first year at Hogwarts has ended, but Harry Potter's magical journey has only just begun. He has learned that he possesses courage he never knew existed, found friendship deeper than he ever imagined possible, and discovered that love, the love his mother showed in sacrificing her life for him, remains the most powerful magic of all. And so our story comes to a gentle close, with Harry safe in his bed, surrounded by the ordinary world of Privet Drive, but forever changed by his experiences in the extraordinary world of magic. The boy who once knew nothing of his true heritage now understands that he belongs to something far greater than the small-minded world of his sky. And with that peaceful image, our journey through Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone draws to its quiet end, leaving us with the warmth of friendship, the triumph of good over evil, and the gentle knowledge that sometimes the most powerful magic of all is simply knowing that you are loved and that you belong somewhere special in this vast and wonderful world. The end. If you are still awake, try our other movie story videos. Subscribe if you liked the video. Thanks.